Hey everyone, today we are going to start with a new topic, that is decentralization in India. So basically, earlier in videos we got to know about the two-tier system that existed. That was number one, the central government, and the second was the state government, alright. But in a country like India with vast population and large land area, we are required a local government as well, because as we can compare the population of Uttar Pradesh with Russia, Uttar Pradesh have a larger population in comparison to Russia, and even if we take an example of Germany and Maharashtra, they are like somewhat similar in terms of land area. So that's why we can say that we require a government other than the central government and the state government at local level as well, so that the issues can be resolved easily at the local level as well. That's why other than when the powers are taken from the central government to the state government and given to the local government, this is known as decentralization in India. Okay, like we can talk about it like this. First we have central, then we have the state, and the powers from both the central and state which are given to the local government. This is known as decentralization in India. Okay. Basically, this is what we call decentralization. It is the basic idea of decentralization. Let's try to understand the basic idea of it and why we require decentralization in India. So, there are large number of problems that are best settled at local level, okay, and the local self-government is important principle of democracy. So, the thing is that the basic idea of decentralization is a large number of problems and the issues are best settled at the local level, and the people of local area, they know about their issues, they know better about their own locality, alright. So the people have better knowledge. We can write it like this, that people have better knowledge about their locality. Okay, this could be the first point, better knowledge. Number second is that they know how to deal with the whole, like how to spend money efficiently. To know how to spend money efficiently. Okay. Then number third point we can talk about is that it is possible for the people to directly participate in the decision making process. So directly participate in decision making process. Alright, so that's why we can say that's why decentralization is important, because it is an important principle of democracy and all the number of problems that are best settled at the local level. Alright, so we have central government which is at the national level, state government which is at the state level, then we have municipality. This is what we call the local government basically, okay, whereas municipality is for the urban areas, alright, and gram panchayat, this is for the village or rural areas, alright. Let's move ahead. Actually, the thing was, earlier in starting period of when the decentralization was taking place within the country, the elections were not taking place regularly, and there were several issues which were not resolved at that time. That the local government did not have the power, independent power for themselves, okay, or resources. So that's why several steps were taken by the government in order to ensure the decentralization take place effectively and the local government have the powers as well. Okay, so what happened? The steps taken towards decentralization, it happened in 1992. Alright, this was important. The steps were taken by the government for decentralization in 1992. The constitution was amended to make the third tier of the democracy more powerful and effective. So what? It was the amendments that were taking place. Okay, so number one was the regular election to local bodies are mandatory, because regular elections were not taking place. That's why it was mandatory. It became mandatory for the local governments to conduct the regular elections, alright. And then there were reservation of seats in these bodies for SCs, STs and OBCs. So the reservation of seats were there. The seats were reserved for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other backward classes in the local government level, alright. Then moving ahead, they have reservation of 1/3 of positions for women. So they have reservation. This is 1/3. We have 1/3 of positions for women were reserved in the local level. Okay, and then we have that the sharing of revenue was compulsory. That the state governments are required. What? The state government are required to share the powers and revenue with the local government bodies. So the nature of the sharing varies from state to state although. Okay. So it was mandatory for the state governments to share the revenue or powers to the local government. Okay. Let's move ahead. Then we have rural local government. So we can see through this diagram, what we can see that we have Gram Panchayat at the village level, then Panchayat Samiti at the block level, and then Zilla Parishad at the district level. So we can talk about it like that. The rural local government was also known as what? Panchayati Raj. Panchayati Raj. Okay. So this is important. Under the Panchayati Raj system, each village has a Gram Panchayat. Okay, and a group of these villages form what? A block, and then a group of block will form what? A district or a zilla. So that's how the whole process of local government, rural local government exists in terms of this hierarchy. All right. So each village or a group of a village in some states have a Gram Panchayat. Each village has some Gram Panchayat. This is what a council is a council consisting of several ward members, which are also known as Panch. Okay. So this was a council meeting, basically consisting of what? Ward members, which were called what? Panch. Okay, P-A-N-C. These were called Panch, and the president of them was Sarpanch. Okay. Then they were directly elected by the people of adult population which was living in the ward. Okay. So the decision making body for this was the decision making body for the entire village level. Gram Panchayat was a decision making body, which was basically a council meeting which consists of ward members that were Panch, and the president of those Panch, or the whole village level, that was known as the Sarpanch. Okay. And these were elected by basically the adult population that was living at the village level. So all the voters in the village were its members basically. Okay, it has to meet at least, meeting arrangement was something like this. If we talk about the meet, they have to meet at least twice or thrice in a year. Twice or thrice in a year. 2 or 3 times in a year. Okay, it was compulsory for them. And to approve the annual budget that was taking place. So they were 2 to 3 times they have to meet. The Gram Panchayat has to take place 2 to 3 times in a year for reviewing the annual budget or maintaining the budget and all. Okay, so that's how the performance of Gram Panchayat could exist, or they could improve by that. Okay, then the local government structure goes from village level. It goes from village level to block level, and then we have the district level. Okay, so that's how it goes up to the district level. So at the few these Gram Panchayat forms what? A block, which is usually called Panchayat Samiti. These few Gram Panchayats forms a block, and these which is known as Panchayat Samiti. Okay, and this, or we can also call it as block or mandal. Block or mandal. Okay. You can also call it that. The members of this representative body are elected by all the panchayat members in the area. So all the Gram Panchayat, the panchayat members which were in this block, they used to elect the members of the Panchayat Samiti. Okay, all the Panchayati Samitis or Mandals in the district were together constituting this Zilla Parishad. So the most of the, we can talk about first like this, that all the Panchayat members which were there. So we can go it like that. The village people elect the ward ward or members, ward, panch or sarpanch, okay. And then these gram panchayats, basically, if we take it like that, gram panchayats, they elect what? They elect the panchayat samiti, basically. So all these, basically a few gram panchayats are groups together form what is usually called panchayat samiti. These gram panchayat, when few are formed together, this is known as panchayat samiti. Okay, so all the samitis or mandal in the district together constitute the Zilla Parishad, and जितने भी पंचायत समिति है उस एरिया में, they constitute what? A Zilla Parishad. Zilla Parishad in the end. Okay. So the most members of Zilla Parishad were elected. Members of Lok Sabha and MLAs of the district and some other officials of the other district level bodies are also its members. So Zilla Parishad includes what? They include the members of Lok Sabha, MLAs of that district and some other officials of the district level. Parishad chairperson is the political head of the Zilla Parishad, basically. Okay. So we can talk about it. This Zilla Parishad includes members of Lok Sabha, MLAs and other officials. Of the district level. This is included by the Zilla Parishad, okay. Okay. And the Zilla Parishad chairperson is the political head of the Zilla Parishad. So the chairperson of Zilla Parishad is basically chairperson of Zilla Parishad is the political head of Zilla Parishad. Political head of Zilla Parishad. Okay. So that's how the rural local government takes place. We have the Gram Panchayat at the village level, which is consisted of ward members, then panch, alright, which are known as panch as well, and the president of those ward panch is known as, the whole village is known as sarpanch, okay. And then they form the Gram Panchayat. So several Gram Panchayats leads to the formation of Panchayat Samiti, okay, of that particular area. This is the Panchayat Samiti. So the members of Panchayat Samiti or block or mandal, they are elected by the people of Gram Panchayat of that area, okay. And that Panchayat Samiti leads to what? A Zilla Parishad. Zilla Parishad is basically including the members of Lok Sabha, MLAs and other officials. Members of them, basically the head members of Panchayat Samitis or something, they concluded the Zilla Parishad. And the chairperson of Zilla Parishad is basically the political head of the Zilla Parishad. So that's how the whole structure of local government, rural local government exists. Under the Panchayat Raj system, each village has a Gram Panchayat. A group of villages form a block, or that is known as a mandal or a Panchayat Samiti, and then the Panchayat Samiti is led to the formation of Zilla Parishad. Okay, let's move ahead to the urban local government. So we have a similar sort of a structure at urban areas as well. For urban areas as well, that municipalities are set up in towns, okay. So the municipalities or municipal corporation are set up in big towns. We can write it like municipalities or municipal corporation, they are set up in cities or big towns. The mayor is the head of this municipal corporation. We must know that the head of the municipal corporation is basically the mayor, okay. Hence, municipalities are set up in towns and municipal corporations are set up in the big city areas, okay. And the head of this municipal chairperson basically or municipality is the political head of the municipality, that is known as the head of municipal corporation, also known as mayor, okay. So that's how the whole structure goes by. We have Nagar Panchayat at the very lower level, and then we have municipal council, and which leads to municipal corporation, okay. So that's how the whole structure of urban local government exists in our country, okay. So that's how its whole structure goes by. Moving ahead, what we have now, we are going to talk about the positive outcomes of local government. What were the positive outcomes of the local government which after the the steps of decentralization that taken place. So Indian local government is the world largest experiment. We must know that is the world largest experiment in democracy that has taken place, this Indian local government. Okay, there are around 36 lakh elected representatives in panchayats and municipalities. 36 lakh people basically are elected in panchayats and municipalities, and constitutional status of local government, it has been given a constitutional status. Okay, and there have been also increased the women representation, that we have talked about it, like 1/3 positions are reserved for women, right? We have read before in earlier as well, but how we can say that like around first 36 lakh were elected representatives are in panchayat and municipalities, and this number of population is like quite bigger than many countries of the world as well. Okay, so the constitutional status has been given to the local government, right? This is the second one. And then we have increased women representation. We have talked about it that like 1/3 of the positions are reserved for the women at local government, right? Which is not existing even at the other platforms. So as we can talk about that, this has been the positive outcomes of the local government. But other than just positive, it also have some negative or limitations of the local government also have it. Okay, so we talk about it like Gram Sabhas, which is the assembly meetings, are not regularly conducted. We have read about it earlier as well, that these assembly meetings are not regularly conducted because they are not taken seriously, or anything could be happening, right? So, and the inadequate transfer of power from state governments to the local government. The transfer of power is not adequate. There have been informalities in terms of the transferring of power, and the local governments suffer from inadequate resources. This is quite common because obviously the resources have been taken by the state government and the central government. So the things which are left with the local government are very inadequate. They are not very proper. Moving ahead, we do have several questions that we are going to look forward, NCERT questions of this chapter. Okay, let's do it. So, question number 1, point out one feature of the practice of federalism in India that is similar to and one feature that is different from that of Belgium. Okay, so the feature that in the practice of federalism in India that is similar to Belgium. Let's write first the similar one. Okay. Okay. So the feature that is similar to Belgium is that there is power sharing between union government and the state government. What? Power sharing between union government and state government. We have read before as well that the Belgium, the government, what they did, they transferred from a unitary form of a government to a federal form of government, in which the power sharing was conducted in such a way so that the issues could be resolved within the French and the Dutch people in Belgium, right? After making several amendments in the constitution, what they did, they led to, like, they established union government as well as the state government, and even at the, we talked about it, the government at the Brussels, right? So that they could be accommodating the differences, and equal representation should be given to the Dutch and French speaking people at both the areas, at the country level as well as the state level. So that's why we can say that power sharing between union government and state government existed in Belgium and India. This is what is similarity between both of them in the practice of federalism. And what is difference? If we talk about the difference, that which is there in the feature, that is the feature in the practice of federalism in India that is different from what that is in Belgium. India does not have any community government in practice, right? But Belgium has one. We have read about it. We can write it here. India has no community government. Belgium has one. Okay, so that's what makes India and Belgium quite different, that there is literally no community government in India, but Belgium has one. We have read about the community government which deals with the issues of language, culture and education related issues within the community, right? It could be a community government could be of Dutch speaking people, French speaking people, or even German speaking people, alright? It could be of any language speaking people. it depends upon the area of which they belong basically. So the Belgium has one community government, but India does not have it. That's what makes India and Belgium quite different in terms of the practice of federalism that takes place in both the countries. Okay, let's move forward to the next question. So the question number 2, that is, what is the main difference between federal form of government and a unitary one? Okay, and we have to explain it with an example. Okay, so the main differences between federal form of government and the unitary one, let's write it like this. We have this federal form of government here, and we will write about the unitary one here. Okay, so in federal, there is sharing of power between the union and the state government. Okay, we can write it like this: sharing of power at union and state government. Okay, but this is not in the case of unitary one. What happens in unitary? The power is centralized. Power is centralized in such a way that with the union government, and there is no role of state government. Okay, we can write it here like roles of union and state government, or even local if it persists. Okay, it is like that. And number second one is that there is no role of state government. We can write it like this: no role of state government. Okay, and moving ahead, the example of federal form of a government, what we have India. Let's take India as a proper example of federal form of a government. How we have union government, we have state government, and we even have a local form of local government. Okay, but in unitary case, what we can say that the example could be Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a good example for unitary form of a government, which continues like they stay like a unitary form of government. Why? That the national, there is only one form of government, that is the national government, which has all the powers. Okay. Alright. So that's how federal form of government is quite different to the unitary form of government. Let's move ahead to the question number 3. State any two differences between the local government before and after the constitutional amendment in 1992. So we can write it in the, like we can make a table form, we can explain it in a tabular form, that local government pre 1992, we have to state two differences between the local government before and after the constitutional amendment. So like before the constitutional amendment, okay, amendment in 1992, and this is after. Okay, after 1992. Okay, we'll just write it like that. Number 1, before constitutional amendment in 1992 was that elections to these local government were not regular. So elections were not regular. Okay, and after 1992, what happened? That it was constitutionally mandated to hold regular elections to the local bodies. So constitutionally mandatory, we can write to hold local government elections. Okay. The second point was that before constitutional amendment in 1992, local government did not have any powers or resources of their own. We can write that they were not quite independent autonomy kind of a thing. Local government did not have powers and resources of their own. Okay, they did not have any powers or resources of their own. But after 1992, what happened? The state governments were required to share some power and revenue with the local government bodies. So the nature of the sharing varies from state to state. So what happened is it was like compulsory for the state governments have to share power and resources with the local government. It was like compulsory for them, okay. So, however, this the sharing varies from state to state, okay. We can write it like as a star or something. Sharing of power / resources varies. It varies from state to state. State to state. Okay. Let's move ahead with the next question. So we have to group these subjects under the union, state or concurrent list in the table below. We have defense, police, agriculture, education, banking, forest, communication, trade and marriages. And we have 3 lists: union list, state list and concurrent list. Alright. We have studied before as well. In union list what comes? We have defense. Basically, union list is of that list which involves the issues of like uniform policy is very important in union list, because it will be conducted or it will be made in such a way that it will be regulated for the whole country. Okay, so defense issues like defense, then we have communication and banking. Okay, these are some important subjects of union list that are to be regulated for like at the country level, throughout the country. Okay, and then we have state list. We can in state list we include the issues of like the state level, that are local to the state level, subjects of which are at the state level. So we have agriculture, and then we have trade along with police. We have studied before as well, right? So we have agriculture, trade and police in the state list. And concurrent list basically is the list in which both the central government and the state government can make changes. However, if any law conflict arises in the issues of subjects of concurrent list, the stand for the union government or the central government, their stand will be prevailing. Okay. So in concurrent list, what happened? We have issues or we have subjects of like education. We have forest and marriage. Okay, so that's how we divide all these issues, these subjects in these 3 lists, that is union list, state list and concurrent list. Let's move ahead with our next question. So question number 5, that is, which of the following pairs not correctly matched? So we have state government for state list. Okay, so we must know that all the state related issues are included in the state list, which are done by the state government. Then similar goes for the central government. We have union list, and then central and state government have a control over the concurrent list. But it is we must know that residuary powers, basically the matters which are not included in any of the 3 lists like state list, union list and the concurrent list, are known as residuary subjects, and the power, that the right to make laws on those subjects, is known as residuary power. Okay, so I should write it like this: matters which are not included in any of the 3 lists. Any of the 3 lists are known as what? They are called residuary subjects. And the power, basically the power to make laws on these 3 subjects is called residuary power. Okay. However, the central government, that is the parliament, they have given rights to legislate on these subjects on the local government level, right? So this is is not correctly matched. This is not correctly matched. Local government does not have the like whole control over the residuary powers. Okay, so that's how we have solved out the questions for this chapter, and we got to know a lot through in this chapter about the decentralization process. We learned about federalism, how different 2 tiers and 3 tiers of the government takes place in our country, right? And we also studied through the examples of Belgium and Sri Lanka of the previous chapter, and we got to know that how federalism is practiced in our country, what makes India a federal form of a country. Okay, and about the 3 ways through which the federalism was practiced earlier, that was on linguistic basis, language basis, and the center-state relation that happened at that time. That's how we are able to understand the whole process of federalism that was taking place in that era at that time, and still taking place till now as well. Okay, we learned a lot about through this chapter. So thank you so much for being with me in this. Thank you so much for being with me. We will meet again in the next video, in which we will have a quick revision of what we have studied so far in this chapter. And till then, bye bye.